Hello, Argyle ISD community. I am your Superintendent Courtney Carpenter. We are here today with some special guests I would like to introduce to you. I have Josh Westrom, trustee. We also have some teachers and a campus administrator, so we're very honored. We have Stephen Orlowski, Teacher of the Year from Argyle High School. We have a teacher over at Argyle South Elementary, Maddie Fairchild, and assistant principal at Argyle South, Katie Hayden. So we are going to be coming to you today with a legislative update as we have all recently been to Austin. Let's get started. All right, so on February 26th, we had the opportunity to go down to Austin for a Capitol Day with Texas School Coalition. And we were able to meet with a variety of legislators down there, not only legislators that represent our community, but others that are chairs of the Education Committee. So we were able to meet with Senator Brandon Creighton's staff, Richard Hayes and his staff, Representative Andy Hopper, Mitch Little, and then also Representative Brad Buckley, who's the chairman on the House Ed Committee. And then we closed our day out by meeting with Senator Tan Parker. So I want to take just a moment and let our special guests share in their words about our experiences in Austin on the 26th of February. So guests, if you all could share a little bit about your experience.
Who wants to kick it off?
You go for it.
Yeah.
Me? Okay. All the
good.
pressure. Okay, in my own words, I think all of us could probably say, just being able to be included in this experience was amazing, and thank you for that. I was probably just, in my own words, glad that I got to speak out on things that I care about the most regarding public education, and others did as well. And so it was nice to be able to people that really have impact and can make a difference on things coming up, that you're able to showcase what the shortcomings have made of the situation that we're in. And I think it was just nice to be able to tell them that we need more. And it's not just Argyle ISD, it's all Texas public education students. And they need to do more to help us. And it was nice to be able to tell them firsthand literally what we've experienced as a result of a lack of funding. And I was so thankful we were able to do that. And I believe that everybody truly listened and was aware to everything that we said, but it was just nice to be able to tell these people directly exactly the issues that we're facing and what they can do to make the situation so much better. And I think that's probably, just besides being a huge honor, I was most proud of that.
Yeah.
For sure. I think it was definitely an honor just to be invited, but also whenever we were meeting beforehand, Dr. Carpenter, and they emphasized that they wanted us to share our story. And I think a lot of times you can be invited to something like that as a teacher and you just sit and smile and nod at whatever your leader says, but she definitely led us to go and actually use our voices and trusted us to do that. So that was huge. I really appreciate that. One of the things that was really cool was I learned a lot when I was there, just the ins and outs of school budget. As a teacher, we've talked about this a little bit, but you go 8 hours a day and then some, just work, and you are just kind of drained at the end of the day. So sometimes it's not necessarily what I want to do, to go read a 70-page bill about whatever. So I learned a lot, but then I also learned some ways that I can still stay informed without having to just sit down and read a bill or whatever that might be. And the other thing that I thought was cool when I got back the next day, I was kind of telling my students about what we were doing, and they're like, so you were with really powerful people? And I didn't really think about it that way. I teach 5th grade, so I was like, you know what? Yeah, but we're powerful people too, and we have a voice, and we elected them, into power, and so they have a responsibility to us to serve us and to listen, and I feel like they did.
Yeah, definitely. They've kind of stolen my words. I agree wholeheartedly with what they said. It was truly an honor to go, and I left with, I learned more. I learned so much about the legislators, the representatives. I did leave feeling heard. They want to hear from us. They want to partner with us. And I think sometimes they just don't know what we need because they're not here day in and day out living the life that we live as public educators. And so I learned that we can reach out to them. They want to hear from us. They want to know our stories. And I'm thankful for the board and Dr. Carpenter for allowing us to go and share our story. I have been present on Twitter before, and I thought I knew I was advocating, and I learned in a whole nother, there's so much more I can do. And we want to empower all educators and teachers in this district on what you guys can also do. And so we're looking forward to partnering with you guys now to show you what more we can do before June 2nd, before this session is over.
Yeah.
I want to add one thing if I can. And if special education is priority number one for you, one of the people we met with, of course, was education chairman or committee chairman Brad Buckley, who was very powerful and has a lot of influence. And Katie explained how special education worked and the timeline for how everything just flies, I think, to show them with the lack of funding and services that this is a huge problem. And that man literally sat there and looked at Katie and said, that is the best explanation of any SPED process I've ever heard. And so if special education is it, and I think that highlights what you said, I think they may know, but they don't know. And that was a prime example of that. So Katie, that was really well done.
That was cool.
Fun. Yeah.
One of the things I'll add is this was Dr. Carpenter, our second visit together down to the Capitol, and it's something I didn't know that we would be doing, and I'm thankful for this administration and for you and your team leading this effort to not only advocate for Argyle ISD and public education, but to educate the community about what the issues are and the challenges we face. And so, you know, when I contrast what it was like the first time we went down there, we were able to speak to the Senate and testify before the Senate about bills they were considering. This time was different because we're down there before these bills go to committee. And we were able to speak directly to them about what our opinions and thoughts were about the impact of those bills before they go to committee. But it was most helpful to have our teachers and staff with us. And I can't say, as somebody that, you know, I'm not in the education profession, but I believe in public education. It was so great to have you guys there telling real life examples of stories about the impacts of the bills and the decisions they make. And what you will learn if you get engaged is that these state representatives, they don't just represent Argyle. Some of them do, but they have lots of school districts. And all these school districts that they represent have different funding mechanisms. They're funded differently. And Argyle's unique in its own way. And for us to go down there and explain to them, this is where Argyle is, this is how we got here, and this is what our challenge is, I think is very beneficial to them. And they did appear to be open to ideas and proposals. And so thank you, Dr. Carpenter, and thank you all for taking time out of your day for going down there and explaining those real life examples.
Definitely.
Okay, appreciate that very much. All right, so we're going to jump in and talk a little bit about what's happening right now, just kind of where we are in the legislative session. It is open. It's over halfway through as far as the number of days that it's open, but it's moving pretty slowly in the areas that we've been working on and trying to advocate for. So Mr. Westrom and I are going to kind of talk through just a little bit what we're seeing and hearing on the House side. House Bill 2 obviously is the big school finance bill. It's still in the House. It actually includes almost 70 new employees at TEA within this particular House bill. But I think most importantly, the basic allotment, which is what we're funded per student, is only showing right now a $220 increase to address that basic allotment. And as we've advocated before, we haven't seen an increase to that since 2019. So a 220 increase is really not very substantial in that particular area there. So Chairman Buckley is working on a substitute of the bill, should be looking at that this next week, but still very different than the Senate side. What would you add to that, Mr. Westrom?
Well, one of the benefits of the visit is we knew that this bill was out there, House Bill 2, when we went down to visit, and we were able to explain to Chairman Buckley and the other state representatives that, you know, $220 increase to the basic allotment, although that is better than nothing. For a school district like Argyle, it's really not even close to being adequate.
Right.
And the reason is because people may remember that Argyle had a funding grant called the Formula Transition Grant back in 23, which started in 29, and we relied on that grant for funding through 23. It expired. And so Argyle is one of the very few school districts that actually their funding went down when there was no new school funding bill passed in the last legislative session. So we were explaining to them 220 kind of gets us back close to what we were in 2019. It's not really a raise for Argyle, and that, and so I think that was one of the benefits of being down there and explaining to them that it's really grossly inadequate. Last thing I'll add to that is I believe, and one of the concerns I have about the $220 increase is that some of that can get even eroded away if they take away some of the hold harmless funding. And what people don't understand is sometimes, and I didn't understand, is when we get property tax relief from the state, which we got last legislative session, really what they're doing is they're taking local funds away from the school district. They're reducing the amount of taxes generated from the local level that go to the schools. And they gave us a property tax relief last session. And so the state says, we recognize we're taking money from local schools, so they send us more money to hold us harmless. And I'm concerned that this bill, as it's currently drafted, is going to give us $220 increase in basic allotment, but reduce or take away the whole harmless funding, which is a little bit of a shell game.
Yeah.
Right.
And means we didn't get anything.
Yeah.
And so we're working hard to
Right.
make sure that that's
Right.
addressed.
Absolutely. The other big bill in the House side is the education savings accounts, the vouchers. That's House Bill 3. And I think one of the things that, if you pay careful attention to this, the initial cost is $1 billion. They have $1 billion in the second year biennium, but it will quickly escalate to over $7 billion in the next biennium. And so that bill will have a committee substitute as well, and it's already seen a 23-hour marathon meeting if you're following along there. But that is a huge increase from what we're expecting just even in the first biennium of House Bill 3 if it were to pass. Also, a few other things that are probably important really to not only our staff but our parents. House Bill 6 is one. Anytime you have a low number, it's usually a priority bill. So House Bill 6 is a priority bill. That's the student discipline reform. Many, many years ago, Texas was much more of a zero tolerance. Then it went to almost a zero consequence. So legislators have heard from teachers over the last few years, and even when we were down there have been a lot of teachers testifying and hearing that the student discipline reform has got to have priority this session. And so that definitely will potentially repeal the 2017 law that restricted out-of-school suspension for younger students, but also increase the ability to have in-school suspension for longer time frames, expanding discipline options for schools, and giving teachers more authority to respond to classroom disruptions, which are definitely have risen over the years. Another one that has been kind of a topic of conversation throughout the year, just even in other districts, is prohibiting the non-school provided wireless communication devices. There are bills out there right now restricting the use of any type of telecommunication or digital communication device. There's kind of disagreement essentially on restrictedness of the entire school day versus during instructional school day, but we are watching that one very closely. And then the abolishment of this Texas state education bureaucracy bill, which is actually authored by Andy Hopper, one of our own representatives, in the abolishment of TEA, giving district that independence back, elimination of STAR testing, powers back to the State Board of Education. So that is something that we're keeping our eye on as well, is that particular bill. On the Senate side, Senate Bill 1, they adopted their state budget on the Senate side, which does have the $4.35 billion teacher pay increase, which is tied to Senate Bill 26. However, as it needs some work there because it's tied to teachers only and not any other classification of group. And I know Mr. Orlowski spoke passionately about that in Austin with our legislators when we were down there to ensure that there are a lot of positions and support positions on our campuses that may not be designated as a teacher that definitely deserve to be in that compensation increase. It also has some money there to the school safety contingent on Senate Bill 260 passing. I know we have shared this with our community before, but Argyle ISD spends over 480% more than we're allotted on school safety, on the school safety requirements with our school district police department and everything else that we have in place. And so you'll see there some other metrics of other things they have built into that budget. They have $1 billion also in for the education savings account vouchers with SB2. So there's a lot going on the Senate side. They also have a school prayer and religious readings bill that's a pretty high priority bill that we're keeping an eye on there, allowing a local decision to implement daily prayer and reading of religious texts. And then they also have their own version of a school discipline bill that's being referred to the Education Committee this week. So, Mr. Westrom, do you have anything on the Senate side you'd like to add?
Well, I think what people should anticipate is that you can see that the Senate and the House don't necessarily agree exactly on how to fund teachers, how to fund the basic allotment, how to fund school safety and other things, and they have different priorities. One of the biggest concerns I have about the Senate is that there is absolutely no increase to the basic allotment in any bill that's been filed, I believe. And so hopefully the House and the Senate can get together and come up with a number that will be better than what it is today.
Okay. So I want to take just a minute and hear from our teacher and campus advocacy. What are you all doing? Because I know I've seen you very active on your social media platforms across Facebook, Instagram, X, Twitter, whatever everyone calls it. But I also know that you've been in contact with Raise Your Hand Texas. So talk to us a little bit about the campus advocacy and what we can do from a staff level.
Definitely. We met with a representative from Raise Your Hand Texas. She is an amazing public school advocate. Her name is Kelly Thomas, and Stephen, Maddie, and I Zoomed with her, and she just helped us and talked us through how we can get the word out to teachers and educators and our community in a way to understand it better. And so we met with her and she gave us a couple resources, and she also talked us through a presentation that we can create to kind of just make it more friendly, the verbiage of the bills and all of that more friendly for everyone to understand. It was a really awesome meeting. I learned a lot from her, and I know that there's more that we can do now that seems manageable as well. I know we're busy, and so that was our big thing, is how can we do this even in the busyness of life. And so personally, I've sent quite a few emails. I tweet a lot of the representatives, or use X to contact a lot of the representatives. And then I've also called and texted a few as well. So when we create a presentation, that will be on there on the direct lines to get you to the appropriate people.
Yeah, I guess to build off of that, it's just, I think all of us have just been trying to be as loud as possible to push for these issues that we really feel are super critical to public education, especially now. Not to throw this out, but I guess I recently, I reposted, to take off what Katie said. I took it from somebody else, but it has all the contact information of phones and emails and whatnot for every member of the House, including ours that are there, and their handles and whatnot are coming up here. But yeah, kind of to build off what Katie said, I've just been trying to be as loud as I can and keep our elected representatives, oh, here we go, in my thoughts. Some I have had better conversations with, or at least have made contact with. Andy Hopper, of all the contacts and information and emails I've sent, Andy Hopper has gotten back to me a few times, and I've been trying to keep in touch, minimally to, stay in his wheelhouse of, this is, what we care about. And he's been very responsive. So I think just trying to do something and let these people know, like we all kind of said earlier, like I don't think people necessarily know, but you have a voice, and that voice is powerful, and they will listen to you if you get a hold of them. That's their job. And we learned from talking with Kelly yesterday that, and this is something I didn't know, that when contact is made with one of those offices, that it's somebody's job to literally record who you are, where in the district you are, and your views on whatever issue it is that you're calling to discuss. Because they want to know, and they want to keep a list of who feels strongly about this and who doesn't, because it's ultimately up to us to hold them accountable with their job for the way that they conduct themselves and how they push for these things. So I guess the last thing I'll say before I turn to Maddie is just, if you even think you care, you need to say something, because they are there and they want to listen, and it's their job to listen. So don't just say, oh, I want to do this. Like, do it. We've given you the resources, and we're going to share some stuff with you to make a difference, because you will and you are going to make a difference.
Yeah, I think since coming back and talking with Katie and Steven, it's, you know, our mission to make it as simple but also impactful as possible. And one of the things that I know, we're all on social media, and X is it's where everything really buzzes with Texas legislation, even not public education, anything, that hashtag Texas Ledge. If you click on that and then click on the latest, that stream is just so, I mean, it's constantly being updated. So you need to have good media literacy, because it's a lot of opinions, but also there's some good resources there. So our thing with social media is pushing those resources out to people who we know follow us. So like on this slide, you can see that Steven has sent the link to testify. This was when they were testifying on HB3. That like marathon testimony. And so that's kind of our thing. I am pretty active on Instagram, so I will link things in my stories. A few weeks ago, I linked Brad Buckley's email and told all my followers, hey, like, just go send him an email and say this. I think a lot of people get stuck up on the wording of it all, and just tell them your story and tell them what you oppose, or, it doesn't have to be like super deep, because they are required to write down what you're saying. So I think the other thing we talked about a lot before we went to Austin that also applies to social media and can kind of get caught up with the emotions of things is that respectful communication is effective communication. And so Brad Buckley is one of the people who's been booed off a few stages recently. And I remember he was in a town hall, it was several weeks ago, and I had tweeted something in response to someone basically saying, like, met with Brad Buckley, he is eager to listen, he does want to hear what we're saying. And Brad Buckley actually responded back to me saying, loved meeting with you in Argyle. So these, our legislators are on social media, and they're responding to what they're seeing on social media. We can see that with our governor and in the voucher bills. He is seeing what people are saying, and he's responding. So it's a really powerful tool. I put this quote on here: the power of social media is it forces necessary change. So we have a voice, and a lot of us are on social media. So I just encourage you to, even if you don't have the words to say, that share button is fabulous. That repost button is fabulous. Any of those things can help, any cause, but especially this public ed one.
Yes, I'm glad you brought up the part about respectful communication, because that is something I had a misconception on. I thought, I wanted to go down to Austin or, and just like fight for what we want. But in reality, I learned that they want to partner with us, and they do want to hear our voice, and it's going to come across way better when it is in a respectful manner. And Kelly Thomas from Raise Your Hand Texas was one that talked to us beforehand and kind of encouraged us that they had been beaten up a couple days before at the PTA rally. And so to just go in, with encouraging words, thanking them because they have done great things, but this is also what we need on the public ed side. And so how can we get there respectfully together?
Do you have something you want to share?
Well, I would just say, I want you guys to know that your engagement motivates someone like me. Right. When I see you fighting for your profession and I see your peers fighting, it motivates me to do. When I go out there and I don't see teachers advocating, then it's discouraging. So just having the three of y'all this year partner with us is just motivating to me. Yeah, and I hope that we can grow. There is power in numbers.
Absolutely.
And I hope to see the three of you just multiply as this legislative session goes on.
Yes.
So just some of the things from a district and kind of a trustee advocacy, one of the things that we talked to our legislators about is really looking at potential bill amendments. And if we were to, recommend some bill amendments that might benefit Argyle ISD and other districts like Argyle ISD, would they consider authoring those? So Mr. Western, let's talk a little bit about the bill amendment that from a district incentive allotment, where we talked about funding is based in this state, and the state of Texas funding is based on average daily attendance, not enrollment. We're one of only 8 states left that do that. And so we talked to them a little bit about that.
Yes, it's just something I've learned a lot about since I've been on the board, and it's people don't realize that public schools are funded on average daily attendance. So when we talk about the basic allotment, it's basically $6,160 a kid, and it's been that way since 2019. But you only really get a percentage of that based on the average daily attendance. You don't really get 6,160 times the enrollment in the district. And one of the things I want people to understand is enrollment-based funding is, I think it's 42 out of the 50 states is enrollment-based funding. And it would help our district tremendously if we could get to an enrollment-based funding. We staff our schools based on enrollment. We build our schools based on enrollment. You don't get to let teachers go on a day-to-day basis because of the absentee rate.
Right.
You buy materials based on enrollment. And so we should be funded based on enrollment. And so one of the things I wanted to get momentum towards is how can you fund Argyle ISD or in school districts in general, what would make you comfortable funding them based on enrollment? Because we have high attendance rate, we have sound financials, and we have great state accountability scores. What's the opposition to funding a school district like Argyle that is meeting those types of criteria? I think Liz, our CFO, has told us the difference between funding us on enrollment and funding us on average daily attendance is costing us about $3.5 million a year.
Yes.
Which is nearly like that was our budget cuts
That
from the
was.
last school year. So like
Yes.
that was our interventionist that we had to cut all of those things. So that's pretty powerful.
And we have a 95, 96% attendance rate. So that 4 or 5% is taking $3.5, maybe $4 million away from us. And if we could just get to an enrollment-based funding, I think it could really help our district.
Absolutely.
And that's what we tried to
Yeah.
do with our amendments.
Okay.
That's great.
So from a community call to action, I know our campus staff here talked a little bit about the teachers and other staff members and what we can do from a community standpoint. We continue to ask you to do Take Action Argyle. That is a platform where when you put in your information, it's going to go to every legislature that's by your address. We also talked about following along. Those hashtags are very important. Hashtag TextLeg is huge. It's got every day, all day long. It's got something new on there. Texas Tribune is a great resource to follow. And then engaging with those state legislators on X. Maddie's right. They are real time on their own. They don't have someone else necessarily running it. They are looking at that. They're responding. And so we appreciate the interaction with them on that. And we will continue to interact with them, and we ask that you do the same. All right, so that pretty much takes care of our live update today. Do we have any questions in the chat? Do y'all see anything in the YouTube chat?
Yes, I see one about the Just Ask Argyle. They are wondering if they're able to customize the response to share their story.
Okay, so that's a good question. So when you go to Just Ask Argyle, there is a scripted response, a scripted email, scripted phone script, but you can customize. So if you know that you've got a personal story, a story about your child, or a program, and you want to convey that message, you absolutely can take out the scripted one and put in your own information. So that's a great question.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else?
Yeah, I would add maybe in closing here that if you don't know where to begin with as far as advocacy and reaching out, any of us can help you with that. And if you're a teacher, stand by, because we have some things in the work that we want to do and try to have some meetings to help you, because we're all affected and we're all impacted by this. So if you don't know where to start, please, I'm sure you can find any of us on Argyle website, if you're on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it, but just reach out to one of us. We can guide you in the right direction and look to connect you with people that will listen.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you all so
Thank
much.
you for having us.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us.
We
This was
appreciate you
awesome.
taking some time away from your classes to come over and speak to our community. Thank you, Mr. Westrom, for taking time out of
Thank
your
you.
schedule to come over and speak to our community. And we will have an update again, hopefully in about another month, and we'll have made progress. So thank you to our community. Those of you listening, those of you who will watch the recording, have a great day, and go Eagles.
Yeah.
Go Eagles!
That's good.